Have you ever wanted to know how to paint autumn trees in watercolour? This tutorial is going to show you in a step-by-step demonstration just how to get that lovely atmospheric effect and beautiful colours of autumn trees using just two colours. I'm Karen Rice and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is the beautiful reference photograph and a link for this can be found in the description below. These are all the materials I'm going to be using, and a full list of these can be found in the description below, along with Amazon and Jackson's Art Supplies links if you would like to purchase any of them. So, shall we get started? I pre-drawn this painting with an HB pencil and masked out with masking fluid all of the light areas. I've mixed up my colours. I'm using burnt umber and quinacridone gold, and I've wet the paper with my large size 14 brush, and I'm dropping in the quinacridone gold wet on wet, just putting it all over the painting, all those sort of lovely light areas. I'm going to make the paint slightly creamier. It's still quinacridone gold, and I'm dropping this damp into wet so the paint isn't as wet as that first layer, and I'm putting it here and there with my size 10 brush. And now I've made the paint even slightly creamier and just drop that paint in there, and I'm going to mix up a little bit more quinacridone gold, and I'm going to dab this in with my natural sponge, damp into damp in the foliage area and on the fallen sort of leaves on the ground to create lots of texture, but it's going to be soft edges rather than hard edges. Remember to really press gently when you're using a sponge. I've allowed my painting to dry and I'm now sponging wet on dry, so you're going to get lots more texture using the sponge in this way. So I'm just very gently sponging here and there. If you don't have a sponge, you could use dry brush or side brush and create some texture, but you need some sort of quite textured paper to do that. So even an old synthetic sponge, torn at an angle, can give you a bit of texture. So have a little bit of a practice before you put it into your painting. I'm painting the tree trunks now, wet on dry, using my size 10 brush, and I'm actually mixed up the burnt umber with some quinacridone gold, and I'm scratching using my plastic card to create that lovely sort of texture on the bark of the tree. And I'm just going to continue now painting my trees in wet on dry, using a mixture of the burnt umber with a touch of quinacridone gold and scratching into the tree trunks. I'm just dropping some very creamy burnt umber damp into wet with my size 6 brush just to put some shadow areas on the trees. I've turned my painting upside down now, and I'm painting some of the middle distant trees and distant trees. I've watered down the burnt umber so it makes the tonal value a bit lighter to create some distance, and I've dropped some little bit of burnt umber damp into damp. I'm painting it's the left-hand trees, but upside down it's the right-hand trees. Wet on dry, using the burnt umber and actually leaving some gaps where the foliage is and just working my way to the top. The reason why I turned it upside down is because I'm right-handed. I find it easier sometimes to work on the right-hand side of the paper and then just pull the paint downwards. So just do what's easiest for you, but remember, turn your reference photograph upside down as well. So I'm putting paint on and I'm dropping in the paint sort of damp into wet to create some tonal value and to give it some sort of depth as well. And I'm using the size 6 brush to paint in some branches as well. So just developing these trees, it makes it so much easier when you only have two colours to worry about, especially when you're thinking about darks and lights. It's quite easy to remove the paint, especially if it's burnt umber. Some of these colours are not staining colours, so I'm just wetting this area at the bottom of the tree because I didn't quite like what I did there. So I've just lifted off and took it off with some tissue, and I'm just putting some little grasses there using my size 6 brush and just using the burnt umber on its own as well, just to create a little bit more detail with the foliage there as well, just to tidy things up. So with my size 6 brush, I'm working on this left hand area with all the fallen leaves, just sort of using the tip of the brush but pressing it down, so you get lots of sort of different marks, not all the same mark. Try to vary them, try to vary the tonal value as well, and perhaps some of the colours. So some you might want to use a little bit more Quinacridone Gold and water it down, and then some a little bit of burnt umber. So you've got lots of variety, because you look at the reference photographs, some more golden than the others, some a little bit more darker brown. I've just put a little bit of markings in the distance as well. Make sure you make that light and the marks small so that it looks like it's going away from you and it creates depth in your painting. I've dried my painting off and I'm just doing a little bit more sponging using the Quinacridone Gold just to create a little bit of texture with all this beautiful foliage. I'm actually going to build up the sort of the tonal value of the tree trunks. So I'm putting on the burnt umber wet on dry with my size 6 brush, and then I'll rinse that brush and just soften and blend that so it makes the tree trunks look rounded and not flat looking. I'm using this same colour to paint the branches. When you paint the smaller branches, just come on the tip a little bit more and don't press down too much, so you get some nice thin branches. So again, I'm putting on this burnt umber sort of medium sort of consistency, and then softening and blending here and there. So really have a look at the reference photographs, see where the darks are, paint them on wet on dry with a brush that you feel comfortable with. I'm using the burnt umber, and then I'm just softening with a clean damp brush to soften the edges. And now I'm using my twig, a sharpened twig with my pencil sharpener. I've dipped it into some burnt umber and I'm basically drawing with it. It's so lovely and freeing. It's like drawing with a pencil with this sort of watercolour coming out of it. It's really freeing up and you get some lovely thin branches. I've blow dried my painting and now I'm just putting a little bit of shadow on the leaves, on the ground, just here and there, using burnt umber with my size 2 brush, wet on dry. Once you've finished the detail with the brush, you can give your painting a little bit of a spatter. I'm just using some of the colours left in my palette, so you've got sort of colour harmony then as well. I've dried my painting again and I've taken all of the masking fluid off, and as you can see I've got some lovely light areas. I'm using the Quinacridone Gold really thinned down so it's like a glaze, and I'm glazing this very gently with my size 10 brush. This is why we have soft brushes in watercolour, so it doesn't disturb the painting underneath. So it's really important to make sure your painting is dry. So I'm just painting this now so it gives the impression of those lovely light golden leaves here and there, but I've also left little white gaps for this sky as well. I've dried my painting off again, and I'm just tidying up some of the edges of the trees because of where I put the masking fluid on. It was a little bit, so I went over the edges a little bit. So I'm just tidying it up with some of the burnt umber. Any of the colours in the background, the tree trunks, make them a bit paler because you don't want them to come forward, because if you look in the reference photograph, the tonal value is a lot paler, and that creates the depth and the distance, and it makes this path look like it's going further away. So I'm just sort of painting and tidying up here and there using my size 6 brush, and just bringing up these tree trunks up into the sky area as well, wet on dry. I don't know if you notice, there's a little pale little tree right off in the distance here, and I'm just painting that on with a really pale burnt umber with my size 6 brush, wet on dry, and just putting a little bit of the Quinacridone Gold just beneath it to soften it. I'm actually painting in some foliage as well that's just sort of hanging down, and I'm using my brush now mixed with the Quinacridone Gold and a touch of burnt umber to put a few little leaves in the foreground here and there with my dancing size 6 brush. Coming towards the end of the painting now, and I'm just sort of finishing off and tidying up a few edges here and there, and just using my twig again to put some of the little branches and little twigs in the gaps in the trees in the foreground. I'm removing my framing tape to reveal a lovely white border, and it gives me time to assess to see if I need to make any changes. Thank you so much for watching this step-by-step tutorial. If you'd like to watch longer tutorials with lots more voiceovers and a drawing template, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about that will be in the top right-hand corner. If you'd like to see more videos like this, why not subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you'll get updates of my latest videos. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.